And it isn't because we're smarter, and it isn't because we work harder. It's because we have a system that unleashes human potential. Since the fall of 2009, 5 years ago now, we have seen, both in our own businesses, and we've got 75 or more businesses. We've really got a lot more than that, but because some of them own other ones. But we're across the board in everything. We're now in planes, trains, and automobiles, among other things. But we're in all kinds of businesses, and they interact with all kinds of businesses. We have seen, since 2009, really a rather steady, not at the rate people hope, but a rather steady increase in business right straight through. We've heard talk, and you've heard talk during that period about double dips and all these things and acceleration and everything. We have not seen it accelerate much or decelerate much ever from, let's say, a 2% or thereabout rate. And that's what we see today. And we see it whether it's in freight car loadings, we see it in all kinds of ways. Automobiles have been better than I would have anticipated. Housing has been worse than I would have anticipated. But overall, the economy has been moving forward now for 5 years. Now, it's moving from a position that, they talk about having 8 or 9 recessions since World War II and how we've come out of them faster. This was way, way, way different than any other recession we've had post-World War II. This was a recession where virtually everybody in this room and around the country was actually scared for a while. I mean, people go through recessions and they're unpleasant and all that, but people literally, they took Treasury bill rates down to a negative rate. Now, when you were willing to take less money from a Treasury bill than you would get from putting money under your mattress, that is a different phenomenon in economics from what we've experienced. So you've had the American people be paralyzed by fear and coming out of that paralysis. And the gain has been really, I think, quite satisfactory. I mean, you'd love to see it faster. And let me point out one other thing. We talk about 2% a year gains now, and everybody says that's terrible, it's not our potential and everything. The population is probably going to grow at a little less than 1% a year. So if you have 2% real gains, that means in a generation, in 20 years, you will have greater than a 20% per capita gain in real GDP. Now, real GDP is about $54,000 per person in the United States. If you get a 20% real gain per capita, that's $10,000 per person more per capita income in the United States in one generation. That's fantastic. I mean, it may not be as good as we did in some of the decades after World War II, but if you go back in history, centuries went by without getting anything like that. And 20% gain, how would you like to have that distributed somehow evenly across the population? You'd be rid of all poverty and everything else. So even at our present rates of gain, this country is turning out more and more stuff per capita year by year, and it will continue to do so. We have a marvelous machine, and it has worked extraordinarily since 1776. In my lifetime, I was born in 1930. In my lifetime, the real GDP per capita in the United States has increased 6 for 1 person's lifetime. I mean, nothing like it's ever happened. And it isn't because we're smarter, and it isn't because we work harder. It's because we have a system that unleashes human potential. And just look at the people in this room. I mean, you have more potential than you thought you had. You will find 10 years from now that you had a lot more potential than you thought you had today. I mean, and you're going to get a chance to use it in this country. You're not condemned to a life that was ordained by what your parents did before you or something of the sort. It's a wonderful, wonderful system, and it's still working, and it will keep working. I went in the textile business by accident in 1965. There's a great tendency to want to hold on, justify old decisions. I mean, that's a human trait. And when you really know you've got a bad business is when you have a good manager and you're getting bad results. I mean, when you're getting bad results with a bad manager, you still have to examine the question of whether you can get better results if you get a better manager. Usually you can't. I've said in the past, that when a management with a reputation for excellence encounters a business with a reputation for bad economics, it's the reputation of the business that remains intact. And I've proved that many times. There are businesses that are just plain tough, and there may be too many competitors, but there's reasons why they don't drop out. There's reasons. Well, we started out in textiles, and we made over half of the linings for men's suits in the country, and we went through World War II and got awards, and Sears Roebuck named us their supplier of the year and all of that sort of thing. And then we'd say, well, we'd like to increase the price of these linings a quarter of a cent a yard, and Sears would say, you must be out of your mind. There's 10 other guys that will sell it to us. There are lots of lousy businesses, and there's lots of wonderful businesses. And my job over the years has been to try and figure out which is which, and I've made plenty of mistakes. I bought a company called Dexter Shoes in the early 90s. I paid $400+ million for it, and it made a lot of money before I bought it. And it went to zero. And the worst thing was that I paid for it in stock, so that $400 million in stock I gave at the time is now worth about $5 billion. So every time Berkshire stock goes down, I feel a little bit better because of my opportunity loss on this business. But when I looked at Dexter Shoe, they had a good position in retailers. They turned out good shoes. They had a great workforce, all kinds of things. But I just forgot one thing, that they weren't going to make shoes in the United States anymore. So you make mistakes, and it does pay to recognize quickly when you've made them. If you've got a good person running a business and it isn't making any money, you're in the wrong business, and you've got to face up to that. Well, again, I love it when the things we buy go down. I get euphoric. Stocks are down today, and I'm buying more of something I was buying yesterday. I'm buying it cheaper. Now, when you go to the grocery store and you buy something cheaper than you bought it the day before, you think that's terrific. But people with their stocks, they think that the stock knows more than they do. So that when the stock goes down, they say the stock is telling them something, and what's telling me is I can get more for my money. but they take it as kind of a referendum on themselves, and it's me versus the stock. If it ever gets back to what I paid, I'm going to sell it. The stock doesn't care what you paid. You have to remember, the stock doesn't even care that you own it. You are nothing to the stock. That stock is everything to you, And you remember you paid $10.13, and therefore the stock should get to $10.13 before you sell it. The stock has no feelings about you. So the only question with every stock, every day, and you don't do it this frequently, is, can I get more for my money someplace else? You've got a chance to be in thousands and thousands of great businesses, and their prices change all the time, so their relative valuations change. And you can make the exchange at very low cost these days. Commissions are nothing. And so you can always shift from one business to another. You have a huge advantage over Andrew Carnegie. When he was in the steel business, he was in the steel business, or Rockefeller was in the oil business. He could not shift over immediately to retailing or something like that. You can rearrange your business empire, which you own through that little portfolio that you have. You can rearrange that, at a moment's notice with practically no cost. It's a huge advantage, which people turn into a disadvantage. There is nothing about the price action of the stock that tells you whether you should keep owning. What tells you whether you should keep owning it is what you expect the company to do in the future versus the price at which it's selling now, compared to the other opportunities of businesses that you think you know equally well, and make that same comparison. And that's all there is to owning.